Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. It is episode 8. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very special guest down in San Antonio, Texas, Will Thomas. Will, how are you, man?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. We talked earlier today. So Will and I are buddies and we're working together, in a coaching relationship as well. And Will's one of the hard workers out there that, it's just a joy to get to see him put in work and grind it out. So Will, why don't you tell everybody who's listening a little bit about you just from a standpoint of kind of what you do on a day-to-day?
Oh, man. Day to day, I am a human figuring it out. I would say that first and foremost. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a nephew. I'm a friend. I would say all those things come before what I do for a living. For a living, I am a personal trainer. I'm a nutrition coach. I'm a group exercise coach. And I'm very passionate about being a coach and coaching people. I'm more so passionate about being a human and all the things that come with it. And so,
Dude, I absolutely love it. And I should say for everybody listening, because they don't get to see you, that Will has the best, freshest haircut beard combo I've seen in a long time. And he's rocking a Project Endure shirt, which just got to him today or yesterday. I had sent one over a while back, and the United States Postal Service, if you're listening to this, you dropped the ball because that first shirt never got to Will. But
someone stole that shirt and they're wearing it, man. Absolutely.
I told you I'm going to see my mailman wearing a Project Endure shirt, and I know where it went. But Will, before we get into the stuff that I really want to dig into, you said something that was interesting to me about coaching and why it's so important to you. And so I'm curious, like how you got into coaching in the first place and what you really love so much about it.
Oh, man. Fitness was something I stumbled upon when it comes to it becoming my career. I've always been into sports. I've always been athletic. My whole entire life, pretty much my whole life has revolved around it, meaning just like my love for it. But I decided to make it my career path and definitely got really passionate about it. I would say towards the end of high school, I dealt with a lot of confidence issues going into, becoming a young man. Just because of the different things that I've gone through, which we'll talk about later. And man, I was just tired of not feeling confident in my own skin. I was tired of getting in fights with my brother and him, excuse my language, beating my ass. I was tired of just walking around trying to be who everyone wanted me to be, or at least who I thought everyone wanted me to be, instead of just being myself. And my brother went to college my senior year, so I had 1 year, with my mom without him, and me and him used to get into it a lot. And so when he went to college, I was kind of able to, finally step out of his shadow and step into my own person. And I found the gym, and I just fell in love with who it made me. Like, I wasn't confident. I wasn't someone who speaks my mind. As you know now, I'm very much so someone who speaks my mind 100% of the time. I wasn't walking around the same way that I am now. And so found the gym, started feeling good about how I looked, started feeling good about how I felt. And those changes carried over into who I am today. So once I found the gym, I just decided I wanted to help other people find that confidence within themselves and like who they are. And that feeling of, helping people do that took over everything.
That's awesome, man. And you and I share a similar path in that way. And I have a really interesting question for you that I wasn't planning to ask, but for me, fitness started out as a way to look good, which translated into a feeling, and I felt good. I felt confident. And now, as I'm probably 14 years into my fitness journey, I think looks are less important to me than they were in the beginning. But
Mhm.
my question for you is, if for some reason you weren't able to look the way that you look right now, right? Because for anybody not looking at Will, like, and you don't see his social media, he's jacked, he's in shape, right? And that's part of who he is right now. But if you were to lose that for whatever reason, would you still find fitness just as fulfilling? And would you still get the confidence from fitness if you couldn't get the results? I think that's the question I
Oh
want to.
man, that's tough. So you mean like the aesthetic results, like the appearance results?
Yeah, like you could go to the gym 7 days a week, lift heavy weights, and feel good about what you do in the gym, but your body would not change.
Oh man. Um, I would still love it just because I'm so incomplete without it at this point.
Mm.
Like uh, I get so frustrated on the days that I don't lift or can't lift or just can't find the time for it. That's a hard question, man. I would love it for just the staple it is in my life, and how it makes me feel. That's hard, man. That's a really good question.
Yeah,
I wouldn't live it the same. No, I wouldn't,
yeah,
honestly, just because of like the root of the problem of why I started it. I was, 6'2" and 135 pounds soaking wet. Like my
yeah.
bicep was like the size of my wrist, and I hated how I looked. I hated it. I hated it. I had a big, I have a big head. I wasn't grown into it or anything. Like it just, I was just goofy looking, and so I wouldn't love it the same, no, if it didn't have the appearance. But I would still do it just because, it's there's no moving around it at this point. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my answer is very similar. And, there's a component of the process that is really rewarding, going and
hmm
doing hard things and seeing progress, or at least feeling progress physically, and knowing that you showed up and you did something hard and you did something for yourself, even if you might not have wanted to. That's rewarding. But then to remove the outcome altogether and to not even have access to the outcome,
yeah,
like that's hard, man. But I think a lot of that is life. And so
yeah.
I'm excited to dig into your story, and I know it already. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know you, off the microphone and also on the microphone on the Pursuit podcast.
hmm
But I feel like you've kind of come into your own a little bit more since then almost.
Yeah.
And I think this story is really powerful and going to change lives. And so I'm going to ask the question and then I'm just going to let you talk.
Okay.
But what is the hardest thing or circumstance that you've ever had to handle that life has thrown at you and you've had no say in the matter?
Oh man. You know my story in a big way, and actually, I don't know if you know a few parts of it that I'm going to add on to it today
Okay.
that all happened at once. The hardest thing that's been thrown at me that I had no choice was the summer going into my freshman year of high school. Um, Everything that happened that summer was hard in its own way. Um, I I don't know where I should start. I guess I'll just start at the beginning of it. My mom and my dad separated when I was 7 years old. My dad held a job, I think 11 months total, like accumulative time out of 11 years of them being married. And so he was just a leech kind of person in sense of he took a lot of energy from people and didn't really give a lot to people. And so they separated when I was 7. My mom obviously got custody of us. We went through some weird moments with him where we would go and see him, and then he would do some real pretty awful things. He would make my brother and I fight each other. He would drink a lot when we were over there. Like, keep in mind, we're like 8 and 9 years old, and he's making us fight each other for like his entertainment and just like weird stuff like that. And so, stopped seeing him once I was about 11. Didn't want to see him anymore. The courts couldn't make us do it anymore, and so we just didn't. So I'm on vacation with my uncle and my aunt in Colorado, the summer going into my freshman year, and I'm downstairs playing Madden with my cousins, like every other kid does. and I get a call from my uncle to tell me to go upstairs. And so, I'm in a hurry because I'm playing a game. If I'm gone too long, another cousin is going to take my spot. So I'm in a hurry. I don't really understand why they're calling me upstairs, and they just look sad. Um, my aunt closed the door behind me, which I thought was weird because they had like this like open door policy kind of thing in their house. And so my aunt closed the door behind me. My uncle has tears in his eyes and he hands me the phone, and my mom's on the phone. And so, due to everything that's happened, I'm super protective over my mom. I always have been at a very, very young age. I used to cry when I was 3 and she had migraines. I would cry until she was okay. So I get on the phone with my mom, and she's crying. And so I immediately go on the defensive and like, what's wrong? What's going on? She tells me to sit down. I don't want to sit down. No, like, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. She's like, sit down. I refuse to sit down. And she tells me that my dad has committed suicide and he's on life support. He got into a bathtub, took 25 sleeping pills, and basically drowned in his own vomit in the bathtub. I fell to the floor. I don't really remember much else. My aunt caught me before I hit the ground. People always tell you you never know what you have till it's gone, and he wasn't a good person and he didn't do a lot of good things, but I no longer would have the chance to talk to him. And so a few days later, like I said, he was on life support, and so obviously he was brain dead. It wasn't looking good. So a few days later, I'm about to go into the mall over there. I had almost forgot about it, and then my mom called and patched me into my dad, and I heard him dying over the phone. And I'll never forget that sound of when they take someone off life support and they're dying, like they're trying to breathe and they're making all these ridiculous noises, and he's dying on the phone, and I don't get to say goodbye to him in person. I don't get the chance to fly out to see him because we couldn't afford it. I just hear him dying on the phone, and I say my goodbyes, and he's gone. Um, After that, I come home, and I'm hit with a slew of other stuff. My mom was dating a man at the time. His name is John. He was a good stepdad, like basically was our stepdad. They weren't married yet, but we lived with them for all of middle school. And so he was my stepdad. He was almost like my dad. And so um, my mom and John had always had this issue because he had a son named Keone that I was obsessed with as like my little brother. I was the little brother. And so I had a little brother, and I had someone to I had to, motivate and inspire. And so they actually separated. So whenever he knew about my dad passing, they separated whenever I came back. Because they separated, we lost the house. And so we had to move out of the house. And so while all that's happening, in addition to all that, both my grandpa and my grandma get cancer at the same time. My grandma got breast cancer. My grandpa got throat cancer. Neither of them could work. And so I lost my dad. I lost my stepdad. I lost my little brother. I had to move in with my grandparents. I didn't have a room. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have a closet. I didn't have anywhere to put my clothes. I was sleeping on an air mattress. My brother and I were taking turns with the guest bedroom because, we couldn't get along. And so I'm sleeping on an air mattress in a house that's not mine, in a room that's not mine, in a very developmental part of my life, and I went down a pretty bad dark path in my head. I lost everything that was important to me. I lost my ability to kind of stand out and be different from my brother. He took it hard. Um, he took it hard because he was actually the one to tell my dad that we didn't want to talk to him anymore. Um, of course, I said my piece when I did, but he talked to my dad 2 weeks or a week before, and my dad, being who my dad is, was like, "Okay, you don't want to talk to me anymore." And my brother was like, "No, I don't ever want to talk to you again." And he's like, "Okay, you'll never hear from me again." And then a week later, we get that news, and so hit my brother really, really hard, in a way that it hit us differently. Me and my brother are different, in a lot of ways, and so it was just a downward spiral, man. He started getting into things that he shouldn't have got into. We started arguing a lot of physical altercations, a lot, and so um, I didn't know it at the time, but whenever I got to college, my mom told me how much I looked like my dad, made her get up more upset with me than she would with my brother. Just because if you've seen my dad, I literally look exactly like him, and so um, all that happened in the span of about 2 or 3 months, and my life just got flipped upside down. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. I didn't know, a good amount of that story. I knew the basics, but that's a lot for anybody to handle, let alone a teenage boy who's at the stage of life where you're just trying to figure it out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine most teenage boys don't have a lot of confidence to begin with. And then all of that happens to you. But, I think one of the interesting things about hard things about adversity and hardship is that it can almost push us in one of two directions. It could push us down and crush us, or it could help elevate us and lift us up to a new level. And, obviously sitting here, you're a different man than that teenage boy. And I think you have a lot to be proud of. And I think you would feel the same way. And,
Mm-hmm.
you're driven, you're loving, you're caring, you're a lot of great things. And so I guess my question is like, how did you get to here from that place?
Um, I took it took a lot of time, man. I was, as depressed as I could ever remember. I would come home from school and I would literally go to that back room. I would I wasn't allowed to have, when everyone else had MySpace and Facebook and stuff, I wasn't allowed to have it because my mom thought my dad was going to find me. And so when he passed, I was, finally allowed to go on social media, and I would come home every day and I would log in online and I would just, try to be someone else. Um, and took a lot of time to stop, being the victim. I would lean into that a lot. Like, I'm not, I'm not here because of this, um, and so took a lot of time to just understand that I wasn't going to be handed anything and nothing was going to change no matter what had happened to me. Um, I would say a, the tipping point probably didn't even come until after college. I found the confidence in the gym. The confidence was a lot aesthetic. A lot of it was. I went to college, started talking to girls. I had one girlfriend in high school that absolutely, broke my heart at the time, I thought. And that's actually, funny enough, that's actually what made me start working out, was her. And her, breaking up with me because I was skinny and telling me about how skinny I was. And it's funny. That's what started it all. And so got to college, fell into really bad habits. I have a long history of alcoholism in my family. Um, and so my brother was in a fraternity. And so, I come into college with this newfound confidence and I joined the fraternity with him. It's a social frat, and so all they do is drink and party. Um, did that for 2 years. Um, just drank a lot. I was getting in a lot of bad situations. Was blacking out a lot. Um, whenever we went to college, my mom. It was pretty much known in our household, like either you go to college and you pay for it, or you stay home and you pay bills. Either way, you're gonna have to pay. And so went to college, no money, partying my ass off, blacking out all the time. Didn't have a car, didn't have a job. I was trying to you know, do stupid things just to make some money that I shouldn't have been doing. And um, I just had one day where my brother and I got into it. And that was probably the last fight we ever got in. I got to college. I'm bigger now. I'm high. I have more confidence. I'm not the same that I was, and I was starting to phase out of the drinking. I was starting to, drinking a lot in excess directly leads me to thinking like my dad. My dad drank
Mm.
a lot every single day of his life, and I was doing that a lot, and it was starting to make me feel like my dad because I was starting to see my dad like in me a lot. And my brother and I got into it one day. He put 3 holes through my door while I was sleeping. um I had just gotten a job at Bill Miller's. It's this like local fast food place in college, and I had a morning shift at 6 a.m. He put a hole in my door at 4 a.m. He was drunk. I was living with him at the time. um he put the hole in my door. I came out and I was like, hey, I understand you're drunk, but please stop. Went back in my room, put another hole in my door. I come out. I'm like, if you put another hole in my door, like we're gonna fight, you know. And I didn't even make it back to my bed. And he put that third hole through my door. I came out. We fought. I whipped his ass. Of course, he was drunk and I was sober, so whatever. But that night, I won't forget that night. I saw my dad in him. I saw my dad in me. And I couldn't let that happen anymore. And so I moved out of the apartment I was living in with him immediately. I went to the apartment complex and I just explained to them what was going on. Explained I just needed to get out of there, and so I did. And yeah, never looked back. Shit. I finished in 4 years, so that was my going into my junior year. Yeah. hmm hmm Yeah. Yeah. We get along better now. He went down his path and he ended up failing out of college and just going down a bad path, and he ended up turning his life around. He has a daughter now. I have a
Oh,
niece. um and yeah, we just grew up. Yeah, haven't
yeah.
fought haven't fought since.
That's awesome. Well, my brother's listening to this. We were not allowed to fight as children. I'm like 3.5 years, maybe 4 years older than my brother, and he's bigger than I am physically, which I don't love. But I was never allowed to fight with him because he played baseball, and my dad was afraid that I'd hurt him. So
hmm
we've never fought, but I think I would win. So Chris, if you're listening, just don't try. But Will, on a more serious note, it's interesting to hear you say that you saw your dad in your brother and you saw your dad in you and you didn't want to see that anymore.
hmm
I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, but are there aspects of yourself that are from your dad that you do like or that you embrace
mm. um
aside from looks?
yeah. uh um Unfortunately, due to how young we were, I don't know too much about him.
Yeah.
um just like I don't know about too much about him as a person, besides obviously a lot of negative things. I would say some of the things that he turned into a negative thing, I can use it in a positive way most of the time. um he was very persistent about what he wanted, and if he wanted something done, it got done. He didn't use, good methods to get it done, but his persistence definitely lives in me. Um,
Mm.
his addictive behaviors, obviously he didn't take them in the right ways, but they've helped me a lot, in the sense of I'm fucking relentless. Like, I do not care. Like, Sam talks about it a lot in the sense, like, he will run through a wall and I will, even if I don't get through the wall, I will run into the wall repeatedly until I get through it. And so, um, I would say his persistence for sure, his addictive personality. If I can get addicted, I've gotten addicted to some good things. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Some healthy things. And so I would say those two definitely, live on in me for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so that's a long stretch of time there where a
Mm,
lot of hard things happen to you.
mm-hmm,
And what I know about you now as a business owner, as somebody who is training for a half marathon, as somebody who does hard things on a consistent basis, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
what is the hardest thing that you've done on purpose, and why have you pursued that thing?
Man, um, I would say the hardest thing I've done on purpose was starting a business in the middle of COVID, for sure. Knowing me, I've struggled with money my entire life. I've struggled with a bad, unhealthy money mindset most of my life, in the sense of I just didn't have a healthy relationship with spending money, making money, whatever you say. And so, after college, I, had an internship at Lifetime Fitness, and, so I already had a job coming out of college at Lifetime, being a personal trainer. Um, I rose to the ranks. I rose through the ranks in that business to the top. I was the, like, number two salesman in my store in the company, and so I'd risen to the highest pay grade. You know, I finally, I made it, right, or whatever I thought I did. And so it was literally like 2 weeks before, um, and then COVID hit, and we all got furloughed. And, for 2 3 weeks, I sat on my ass and fell back into that victim mindset, that I'd been so familiar with most of my life. Just like, I finally do it, and of course this happens. And, whenever the pandemic started, we were all like, yeah, this will be over in like a month or two, you know? And
Yeah.
it wasn't, man. And so I would say for 3 months, I fell back into that dark place. Just, I was drinking, I was smoking, I was just like, throwing it all away. And, I got on the phone with one of my managers at the time, and he said, "Do what you have to do." And because we had signed a non-compete, and so I
Mm.
didn't think that there was anything I could do. And so he said, "Do what you got to do." And so I did what I had to do, and I started kind of piecing some things together. Reach back to a lot of my old clients and see which ones did want to train. In addition to being on unemployment, kind of parlaying those two things together. And, just with a lot of luck and a lot of blessings, was able, to put some pieces together and, make a business out of it. And so, yeah, that would be the hardest thing that I've done on purpose, just because that's really unlike me. It's really
Mm.
unlike me to be an entrepreneur. Like, growing up, I would see people being entrepreneurs, and I was like, there's no way I could do that. There's no way I could not have a paycheck. There's no way I could not have a guaranteed income. There's no way I could just, you know, do it on my own. And, I'm so much team oriented.
Mm.
And I believe so much in working with people, that, doing something like this on my own just wasn't even in the back of my head. Like, it wasn't even like a fucking idea. And, yeah, man, just, that's probably the craziest thing I've done. I still think about it every day. Like, I'm working on the money mindset. I'm working on those, those things, but I'm doing it, and it's crazy to see. And the highs are highs, and the lows are low, and I fucking love it, man.
Yeah. As someone who gets to see the inside behind the scenes look at what you do, right? When we meet and we work through things, I think it's something we've never talked about before, but I'm interested to hear your opinion on.
Hmm.
As someone who has been a full-time entrepreneur now for going on 5 or so months,
Hmm.
I've definitely experienced that emotional volatility, right? The highs are
Hmm.
high, the lows are lows. And I think my gut reaction, my gut instinct to the lows is to want to run back towards safety. And it's almost that feeling of like, all right, well, I had a good run and maybe I'll just go and, get a comfortable job. And, that feeling doesn't last long, but it happens and I notice
Hmm.
it. Is
Yeah,
that something that you've experienced as well?
absolutely, man. Um, yeah, 150 times. You just get tired of just like it's never ending, dude. Like, and it seems like when it rains, it pours,
Hmm.
both in positive and negative directions. And it just gets frustrating. Like that we're in the people business. I think Nick Bear says it all the time, and that, more people are in the people business than admit it. But especially what we're doing in the coaching business, we are in the people business, and people are frustrating, man. Like, people, one person can take you to such high and such a low immediately, whether they hold any weight in your life or not. And um, yeah, man, definitely have wanted to, take my talents elsewhere. Um, I'm I'm a salesman by trade. That was my specialty over there at Lifetime. I've been able to sell things my whole life. Been able to sell myself.
Yeah.
I've been able to get into a lot of opportunities that I probably shouldn't have gotten into. Just being able to sell who I am. I think the last guest I just heard this week talked about that. He's so much more comfortable selling himself, and so I am too, in that sense. And so it's easy to, I can do medical sales. I can do stuff like that. I can venture out and, not do this day to day, man. But just something keeps bringing me back.
Yeah, I'm curious so for me, the best part about entrepreneurship is the freedom and flexibility that you
Hmm.
have. And I,
Hmm.
I think that's really hard to put a price on. And for
Hmm.
you, what is that thing, if you can pinpoint it, that just keeps you coming back day in and day out?
It's the freedom, man. Like 150% is the freedom of just, I was in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, you know, on a razor driving through the Rocky Mountains, just like, I could move here. Like I can. I could pack up everything I'm doing. I take my online clients and I could move to Colorado just because I wanted to, you know what I mean? Having and that's just the craziest thing to me just because I'm so regimented with where I'm at and who I'm around and everything like that.
Mm.
I'm not really one to do a lot of spontaneous crazy things like that, but I can do that. I can do so many things, and you know, growing up having such a small view of what I could really do, to where I'm at now, understanding, how powerful I am and, how much I can make happen just by my sheer will and determination. Um, it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just writing a blog the other day about Hernan Cortez, who was a Spanish explorer back in the 1500s. And he took a group of men to what's modern day Mexico, but it was the Aztec Empire at the time. And they were after this treasure that had been there for over 600 years, and nobody was able to take it. And so many armies, far bigger than Cortez's army, had come and tried to take it. Nobody was successful. So Cortez and his men got there and he gave them a pep talk, I'm sure. And I'm sure he really fired them up. And then he did something that changed the course of history. He turned around toward the boats that were anchored offshore and he said 3 words. He said,
Burn the
"Burn the
boats.
boats."
Yep.
And they burned the boats. And he went from an act of inspiration where he was trying to inspire his men. And now he changed it to desperation. And it was the only way out. And I'm sure someone asked, how are we getting home? And he said, we're leaving in their boats or we die. and they took the treasure, and then they ended up conquering the Aztec Empire. And I'm not going to get into semantics. I don't know if that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do,
Yeah.
but the point is, like, for entrepreneurship, you're backing yourself into a wall, right? And the only way to move is forward. And so I think what you did, what I did, what every other entrepreneur out there did, was we burned boats and we forced ourselves to have to be successful. And I think the important thing is you burn boats, not bridges. And you don't want to sever relationships just to sever relationships, but sometimes you have to take out the escape clause, and you have to make success the only option. And and it's cool to see you doing that. It's inspiring as I do that, and so many others. And so to your point about flexibility and freedom as well, I mean, I was just on a run today at 2:30 on a beautiful fall day here in Philadelphia, and I had the freedom to do that. And speaking of running, we're both training for the Go One More half marathon in January.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. And you know, part of Project Endure is endurance. And I think endurance is a really interesting concept because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. And so my question for you, Will, is what does the word endurance mean to you?
Oh man. I wanted to touch note before I answer that question. I wanted to touch note on the burn the boats thing you said. What I think that a lot of it, you can use that, you know, that saying or whatever. It comes in with relationships too, man. Like you see people around people that they have outgrown, and that, or that they're just in different phases of their life. Like not even in a negative way, saying, you know, I'm better than you, or I've come farther than you. It's just in the sense of, you know, who you are and who I am are now two different people. And I like what you said about you burn the boats, but you don't burn the bridges, in the sense of the bridge would be like y'all's friendship in general. You know, like there's a lot of friendships that I have that we're, you know, we're cool with each other. Like we don't talk, you know, but we don't have any, like, you know, disdain for each other. But at the same time, you know, whenever you talk about burn the boats, like you got to leave a lot of those relationships, man. Like a lot of the people that you're not on the same playing field as anymore, and you're just not on the same wavelength. And it's scary, man. It's scary leaving those relationships. It's scary to go out and find new friends. It's scary, you know, like me and you, but we've never met in person. We know each other from the internet, but I feel like I know you so well, you know what I mean? And that would have never happened if, you know, I stayed with a lot of those relationships in my life that I felt comfortable in, and, you know, could get me home at the end of the day, you know? And so,
wow, that's a great point, Will. Great point.
And so, I just wanted to say that about, you know, burn the boats. Always burn the boats, man. Like it's like a snake shedding its skin. Like the only way you're gonna get to the next level is you leave that other skin behind. You know, like you can build a boat. They could have gone over there, not fought anyone, gone to the trees, built a boat, and, you know, got home. You can do that, you know, but always burn the boats, always. What do I? So what? Sorry, say the question again about endurance.
Yeah. What does the word endurance mean to you?
Oh man, everlasting, I would say, is the first word that comes to my mind. And there's countless things that you're going to experience, like whether that's, you know, running and, you know, getting injured. Like I fucked up my knee, and I'm on, you know, I'm finally at the half marathon distance, and I'm finally, you know, gearing up my pace, and then I mess up my knee, and I go on vacation, and I come back, and it's just not the same, and I have to go down on my mileage, I have to go down on my pace, and it's frustrating, you know. My dad, you know, the hardest thing about what happened with him is now I'm a grown ass man and I want to talk to him. Like, you know, I understand things now in a way that I never did before with him. Like, I'll never forgive him for what he did. But more so, I would say that phrase is more so buried in the I can never forget what he did. But now that I'm a grown man, like, you know, I have bills, I have things that I'm stressed about. I have a whole business, you know, that the pandemic could happen again, all the gyms could shut down, and we could both like be screwed. You know what I mean? And um, just the amount of understanding that I can't go have a beer with him. I can't sit down and ask him like what happened. You know what I mean? I can't talk to him about, the nights that I blacked out and I felt out of control, and you know, I'll never get that. And so that, in accordance with injuries, in accordance with, the highs and lows of a business, having a really good month, having a really bad month, having friendships that you're going through, growth issues with, having relationships that you're having growth issues with. Endurance is everlasting in the sense of, you know, I love the BPN quote. I love it because it's so simple, and you have to go one more, and you have to see the next day through. And, when all that stuff happened with my dad, and when I'm sitting there in the back room, and, I contemplated suicide, I contemplated why I'm here, what this is all for, what's the point, but you wake up the next day and you fucking do it again. And, you get injured and you dial it back and you fucking go at it again. And, you know, um, with my dad, I'll never be able to have those conversations with him, but, with my kids, they'll be able to have those conversations with me, and I'll be able to talk to them about those things. And, it's everlasting. It's never quitting. It's always going one more. It's always taking the next step. It's always, you know, trying the next day. I always say this with my nutrition clients when they're like, well, I had a bad day yesterday. I went over on fats yesterday. Do I change how I ate today? Like, no, it's a clean slate. It's a new day. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I don't like having fights 2 days in a row with people. Like, if I argued with you about that yesterday and I woke up today, I don't want to talk about that again. Like, it's a new day, everlasting.
Man, I love that. And it made me think actually of Max Tuning. Do you know who Max Tuning is?
The sour strips guy, right?
Yeah. Sour
Yeah.
Strips guy, YouTuber into fitness. And his father passed away when he was young. And I don't know the whole story, but I do know that his brand, one of his brands is Ever Forward. And I think a combination of everlasting and ever forward, I have this imagery in my head where endurance is just this continual pursuit of forward motion. And you might not physically be moving forward. Some days you might physically be moving back, but in your mind, you're always pushing forward. And to speak to what you said, Will, I have this quote by Veronica Roth. So she said, there are so many ways to be brave in this world. Sometimes bravery involves laying down your life for something bigger than yourself or for someone else. Sometimes it involves giving up everything you've ever known or everyone you've ever loved for the sake of something greater. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it is nothing more than gritting your teeth through pain and the work of every day, the slow walk toward a better life. That is the sort of bravery I must have now. And yeah, man, I think at the end of every day, and we all have those days, right, where life's just hard. We might feel defeated, we might feel even hopeless, but tomorrow's a new day and we get another chance to try again. And I think just with that viewpoint, that perspective, that life is such a gift that no matter how hard or no matter how difficult or no matter how life goes in a way that we don't want it to go, at the end of the day, we're still alive and our life is such a gift. And I just hear that so much in everything you're saying. And I just really
Hmm.
appreciate that message, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's just, it's simple, and it sucks because it's simple. You either
Mm.
take the step forward or you take a step back. And, I like what you said about, you can have literal forward progress or literal negative progress, but you're still in your mind, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Like, I know today wasn't good. I know, it was a bad mental health day and I was down on myself. I know it was a bad business day and I made a bad decision. I didn't hit my workouts. I didn't show up for what I said I was going to do. I didn't show up for who I said I was going to show up for. But, I love, having a new day for that reason. Just because, man, like, I was, selling drugs in college, like, in what, 5 years ago. and now I'm making more money than I ever have in my life, and I'm not like burning it away like my dad did, like
Mm,
I'm not, drowning in alcohol like I used to. I'm not,
mm,
I'm not, trying to evade all of the things in my head. I'm confronting them. That's one thing why I love running, why I love
mm.
endurance is I have to get in my head. Like I I have ADHD like pretty bad, and I don't like taking medicine for it because I don't like the way it makes me feel. And so there's so much going on in my head at so many times. Like I dream crazy dreams. Like they're in depth, they're thorough. Feels like I never get a rest from being in my head. But when I run, when I do endurance sports, I'm stuck in my head. I have to confront, like I said, I had to confront the little bitch within me. I have to, the guy who wants to quit, the guy who wants to be the victim, the guy who's like, you know what, a few weeks ago you were just injured, you can slow down, you don't have to go this far, you have all this to do, you don't have to do this. Like I can confront that voice in my head. I can confront the little, the kid that lost his dad and lost his stepdad and lost his little brother and had his whole world flipped that down. And I can show up and be like, no, like we're not going to go sit in the back room in the dark. We're going to go into the light and we're going to confront this and we're going to deal with this. And that's the coolest thing, man.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. And so, Will, as we begin to wind down here, I have a final question. And I think this final question stems from the fact that I've been the person that's needed this advice. And hopefully, in due time, there will be thousands and millions of people listening to this podcast. But for the hundreds who might hear this one, if you were to talk to a single person right now who's going through something hard, and they didn't choose it, right? Maybe they lost a loved one. Maybe they're dealing with an injury. Maybe they lost a job. I don't know. It's something. What would you say to that person who's hurting and who's maybe feeling a little hopeless right now? Or even if you could look back to your younger self, I mean, what would you say?
Oh, man. Um, you're not alone. Um, every day, the main thought, anytime I have a big moment, I think about my dad. When I graduated high school, I, you know, embraced my mom and cried my eyes out. When I graduated college, I was the first one in my family to ever do it, ever. Any part of my family to ever graduate college, and my dad's dad was there, and my dad's dad looks exactly like my dad, and I see him and I cry, and I'm um, when I had my first six-figure year, you know I think about him, and when I get married, I'll think about him. When I have kids, I'll think about him. And the overall biggest thought that goes through my head is just, I bet he felt so alone, and I bet he felt like there's no one he could confide in, and there's no one he could talk to, and there's no one going through what he went through, and there's no one that would understand it. And I would say to all the people that are going through all those struggles, to myself as a kid, you're not alone, and I'm right here. Um, I've built a huge, friendship with you over just being there for each other. Like, like men have this negative stigma around talking about their feelings, and also around just telling, another guy like, hey, like I got you, like whatever you need, like it doesn't matter. And so the biggest thing would be, you're not alone. I'm here. Joe's here. This whole community that we're building around Project Endure is here. Um, and you're not alone, and you will not take another step forward by yourself.
Boom. That was, I couldn't have said it better, Will. I mean, that was just perfect. And I know personally that you're there for anybody who needs you, as am I. And I would just ask that, if anybody's listening to this podcast and you are feeling alone and you're listening to Will and I right now, I mean, reach out to one of us, reach out to both of us. And Will, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or follow along with your journey, what would the best place for them to find you be?
uh, on Instagram. That's I try to not use several social media platforms because I'm already on Instagram so much. My Instagram name is Built by Will. Built by Will is my training business. Built by Will obviously I'm Will. And so, yeah, you're built by me, but you're built by yourself. You're built by your own will. You're built by your will to take another step forward. You're built by the will to be everlasting. You're built by the will to not, understand that you're not alone and, keep fighting. And so, yeah, built by Will on Instagram.
Dude, I never asked you that. I just always assumed it was that surface level. Like your name is Will and built by Will. That is so good. That is so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's just me. And I mean, I think even with me, like the original thought was like, yeah, like it's just built by me. But I don't know what day it was. I sat down and thought about it, and I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. And it's always more than that. It's I'm, you come across me in your Instagrams and, Sam Tooley's Instagram and, half the people in the BPN community's Instagram, and we seem so surface level. Like we love fitness, and I love fitness. I love feeling good. I love looking good. But yeah, there's so much more.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story and come on the podcast. And, if everybody's listening and you want to reach out to Will and you want to get training, you want to be built by Will himself and by your Will, reach out.
Absolutely.
And Will, thank you again, man. This was awesome. And we can't wait to have you back at some time in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we logged off, I did want to ask you a question.
Sure.
We're talking about endurance. And so when it comes to endurance, what would you say would be something that you had to encounter that was quick and wasn't endurance related, but kind of generated that same amount of force in your life that something, long-term did?
Wow, what a good question. This is the first question anybody's asked me on the podcast. We're 8 episodes in. So when I was in college, it was 2014 or 2015, one of those. I was driving to the gym on just a regular weekday morning, and a car ran a stop sign at an intersection going about 40 miles an hour approximately. And we connected at the front corners of our cars, and they were in a low car. I was in a Jeep, and my car rolled a couple times. And I just remember seeing them out of the corner of my eye. I remember feeling the impact and just gripping the steering wheel as tightly as I could. I mean, my hands hurt, and time just slowed down. And I remember the world just spinning in front of me, the airbag coming out. I could still taste, every time I talk about this, I could kind of taste it in the back of my nose, back of my throat, that powder that comes out with the airbag. And anybody who's experienced that knows the smell. And the world just stopped. And the only thing I felt was this pit deep down in the depths of my stomach. And it was just sadness. And I was sad that I was never going to get to see the people I loved ever again. And that 3 seconds went by. It felt like 3 hours. And when the dust settled, I realized I was still alive, and my car was sideways, and the passenger side door was on the ground. The driver's side door was up in the air. I tried kicking it open, but I was like stuck in the seatbelt. It was so tight. And someone driving behind me had stopped, climbed up on my car, and helped me out. And when I got on the sidewalk and I realized that I was completely okay, and I looked at my car on the road completely totaled, I just felt completely on top of the world. It was the best feeling I've ever experienced. And at that moment, I just felt like Superman, and nothing else mattered. Like, it didn't matter how much money I had in the bank account, what I was going to school for, what body part I was going to work out at the gym that day. The only thing that mattered was that I was alive. And that changed my perspective on life. And I wish I could just bottle up that feeling in a mason jar and just take a whiff every morning that I was dreading getting out of bed or felt a little bit of just ungrateful. Like, I wish I could just smell that again. And yeah, so that was a quick moment, but I appreciate that question.
You got to get the powder from the airbag and just smell that, man.
Dude, I wonder if I could buy that online. That's not a bad idea.
Hey man, you can do anything these days. Yeah, I like to ask people a question at the end of each podcast that I am on, and so I'm glad that was cool. Thanks.
That was beautiful. And if anybody's thinking of having Will on the podcast, now be on your toes and be prepared.
Hey, hell yeah, you're gonna get asked something. Yeah,
well, thank you again, Will. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it, man.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.